Well, the facts are very clear. Europe, over the years, made more and more stringent positions, and research in Africa is dependent on funding, and most of the funding comes from the different European countries, Norwegian, Scandinavian countries, Germany, Switzerland, and so on and so on. And the organizations that we see there, like the CGIAR, you had examples of IATA here, they live on subsidies of Europe. So if the board of directors says, please stop this GMO because otherwise Europe will not give money. The European Union makes always tougher decisions and really blocks the science. They should be aware that they block the science by making these statements instead of letting the scientists debate directly with society. And that's one of the problems. And we see that at our universities, we do the research, and the science goes fine, and we see all the potentials of the research, but these potentials of the research, we don't know really how to communicate to society, because we think we are rationalists, but we forget that the society was living there for thousands and thousands of years, and that without science was there. Enlightenment is recent, genetics is very recent, and the details of plant genetics is 10, 20 years. How can you, at that moment, will work with the science, create the products that society wants, and understand what society is. If in our education we don't learn to listen to how the emotions of people, the feelings, why they make decisions, how can we talk in group, and the same for the economy. We are astonished that the major industry is not protesting against Europe much more strongly than they are. Because if Africa is blocked, well, the science cannot go on in Africa and the products will not be made in Africa. But economy, like we have made it, and many of the younger people, often very rightly, protest against the way the economy goes. But economy grew. It's a kind of evolution, like science evolved. We can probably change it. We could change slavery. And now everybody is emotionally says that, yes, what these 4,000 or 5,000 years of slaves, that's a system we don't like. And we go back to try that in our production scheme, we stay away as far as possible from slavery. But still, there are enormous problems with how we do our economy. But the major companies have learned that if they have a monopoly and there is no other competition to them, that they have quite some advantages. So if the public sector says that we need this company's decision to block the science, then we have problems. And that are problems that can be disputed. And we should learn in society to talk about that, about these problems, without starting fighting. And just as the same that we should learn, if we emotionally think this or this point is right, that we can discuss it without fighting. But for all that, what we badly need is to see the figures of that the scientists are bringing, and there, as it has been said in the movie, there is not the slightest fact that there is, at the moment, danger has been demonstrated with GMOs, not for the health of humans and animals, not for the environment. And on the contrary, most of the environmental problems, you will solve them through engineering and technology. And the GMO technology is very crucial for doing that. And all this is now especially important for Africa. You make me shut up from time to time, because otherwise I take over the show. But for Africa, people talk, well, food production, we have enough, we can give them to food if it is really necessary. But it's not the problem of basic staple food, but it's mostly the quality. It's a scandal that only very, very recently there is much more talk about looking in the quality of food. And since long it was known that in Africa, together with shortage of food, we see the stunted children. And it's not the amount of food they had that is the problem, not the directly problem of calories, but it is for their intellectual, physical, and neurological development. They need certain concentrations of zinc, of iron, provitamins that we in the rich world have through the diversity of food that we can enjoy. And that's what is lacking. But these stunted children make stunted adults. And the figures that at the moment are available at FAO, but nearly nobody talks about it. That's Burundi. Between 50 and 60% are grown-ups were stunted children. So they suffer from that in their capacity of doing certain types of work. And that is not only for Africa, it's of course in our cities, what is called le quart monde, those who really have not enough basic food and just take some carbon sources and don't have the diversity I pointed out. So that are the basic things that scientists should learn to communicate. And food science is very recent because it's complex. You see in medicine, enormous progress, but always what we still don't know is also enormous. So it's only at the moment that we really start to have some tools to analyze all these problems of quality of food. But we have, like we progressed rapidly with genetics, with the tools, we can hope that in the society we can learn much better data about food. But we have to discuss the data. And I'm surely clear that we have to be activists for that, but that we not for the other questions.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I would not dream of ever trying to shut you up. It would be such a pity. We're looking for very brave people. Who disagrees with Professor van Montagu?
Briefly, it's not true that technology will mainly solve hunger problems in the world. It's mainly stopping conflicts, wars, inequalities, improving education that will solve the problem of hunger. That's my main critique against what Professor van Montagu said till now, but I have other general remarks to make concerning the film.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
A great simplification and unbalanced presentation.
Okay. So now we go in the same way. Who disagrees with what just has been said?
Yeah, I'm currently studying bioengineering. And I just think, although it's true that conflict can somewhat hinder scientific advancement and therefore crop production, etc., it does not mean that this is necessarily true for the scientific advances, because it is necessary to have an open debate to really improve the speed of advancement, to improve the way foods can be produced, and to supply Africa with the necessary food that they require. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to react to this? Who disagrees with what just has been said?
I think that Africa is not starving by lack of technology, but because of centuries of colonial land and seed disposition. And the subsistence agriculture that was replaced by cultivation of crops for export.
Who of the panel members would like to react to what has been said so far?
Probably I.
You'll get your turn first, Scott, who has been traveling back to Africa. And then we come back to you. Yes.
I'm a little confused by both of your statements because there's validity in them, but I don't know why it isn't yes and. There's issues in Africa that go to what you're saying, and there's issues with food, and GMO could help with those issues. I don't understand. It feels like what your statement is saying is this is the correct way and anything else is incorrect, instead of saying that's valid and GMO could be valid.
Yep.
Yes, I, of course, fully agree with you that the points you stretch are maybe much more important. But that's for economy. Everybody in society can dream about a world where people would be in that way and the economy would go into this direction. But we have to be realistic. We are sitting with this capitalistic world, if you want the terminology, with our ways of production, and we cannot just, like in evolution, you never can come back, and that's why nature can be very horrible, and the evolution is there. We are there, and these steps are there. And with this limitation of intelligence we have, we try to do that. So, indeed, we have now, with the tools we have made, the tools we see that can work, without changing anything else, we can change the production and have on the same acreage maybe double production. And we can make new varieties where never anybody was doing agriculture. We can have orphan crops that were completely neglected by science, and the science can start working on it. So all these are little steps without changing the world, because if we are with ideologies, then everybody starts fighting, and you can take the risk, but we have seen what it helps. And it was just the step of what can a scientist do today with the knowledge he has.
It's clear that we need, in Africa, we need a subtle way of dealing with things. The old colonialism, I remember the nasty word Leopold for Belgium. I remember the nasty word Swiss banks. In reality, today, these are realities of an imperial rule which is still here, you know. And we must be very careful not to overblow our way of looking at progress, our way of looking at modern breeding. We must combine it with different kinds of knowledge. I would say traditional knowledge is as important as scientific knowledge.
We really appreciate traditional knowledge, but it has to be backed up by scientists. We don't say we immediately discard it, but if facts are presented, you have to control them. And people have to learn that science is never a definitive position. It's to the best of our knowledge at the moment, and every scientist is invited to see if there are alterations. So it could lead to some misunderstanding and emotional things, because people have observed it so long time. They believe in the facts. What are the real facts that they say that they feel?